A billionaire decided to invite his former lover to his wedding celebration, but her arrival accompanied by someone else led to the cancellation of the ceremony. Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to the channel where love stories come to life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Arseny Volsky's luxurious apartment, filled with the soft light of the day's end. I, Arseny Volsky, couldn't take my eyes off the elegant invitation. Everything about it, from the exquisite font to the expensive paper, spoke of wealth and power. However, behind this ostentatious luxury was something more personal, an invitation addressed to Varvara Sokolova, a woman I once loved madly, but whom I gave up for a dazzling career. I have the honor to invite you to share the joy of my wedding, the invitation read. I fully understood the impression this gesture would make. It was not just an invitation, but a striking statement designed to demonstrate to Varvara my achievements over the years, a successful entrepreneur, owner of a whole network of thriving companies, a true magnate. I had become a completely different person, not the timid young man who was once afraid of serious commitments. My future wife, Eleonora, embodied my current aspirations and status, young, attractive, from high society. She perfectly matched the rules of the big business world, and with her, I felt comfortable, without unnecessary emotions or sentimentality. I recall our last conversation with Varya. She dreamed of a family, children, something more than just a relationship, while I preferred numbers and reports, lucrative contracts, and the frantic pace of life in the capital. I summoned my assistant, Gleb, deliver this invitation personally. It's important that everything is perfect. Gleb nodded, understanding that for me, this moment was not just a formality. An inexplicable anxiety settled somewhere deep in my soul, either anticipation or a vague feeling that this step could erase everything I had strived for so long. The phone vibrated silently. It was a message from Nora about the final preparations for the wedding celebration, but my thoughts were carried away far into the past, where unfulfilled hopes and unhealed wounds remained. I did not yet know that this invitation would become a point of no return, that in a few days my perfect world would crumble like a house of cards. For now, however, I had only the gold lettering on snow-white cardboard in cold calculation in my heart. The invitation was sent, and silence fell in the office. Outside the panoramic window, the morning light gradually painted the skyscrapers in silvery hues. I sat in my chair, mechanically flipping through old photographs that I just couldn't bring myself to throw away. My gaze lingered on a 6-year-old picture, where Varya was laughing, and the sun's rays were playing in her hair. Back then, we were completely different, naive and full of hope. Memories crashed over me like a wave, filling the office with ghostly images of the past. We had met at university. Varya was a determined student of the Faculty of Education, and I was an ambitious young man, already making plans for my own business. Our romance seemed perfect, I was assertive and energetic, she was gentle and principled. We could be together if you weren't so obsessed with success, Varya often said, and she was right. The early years of our relationship were like a dizzying flight, night walks around Moscow, conversations about dreams and plans. Varya believed in me more than I believed in myself. She saw in me not only a future businessman, but also a sensitive, soulful person. However, gradually something began to change. Business projects became ever larger, meetings and conversations ever shorter. I became more and more immersed in the world of numbers, contracts, and opportunities, while Varya was left alone more and more often. Our last serious conversation took place late in the autumn under a drizzling rain. We sat in a small cafe not far from the university. Do you realize that your ambitions are destroying us? Varya asked. This is called development, I replied coldly. At the time, I did not realize how wrong I was. Success seemed more important than any human relationship. The breakup was quick and painful. One day she simply said goodbye and left, and I continued on my path to the top. Years flew by unnoticed. My business grew, as did my fortune. Eleonora appeared in my life, beautiful, ambitious, perfectly fitting into my world. Everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly. The approaching wedding with Eleonora was supposed to be the culmination of my successful story, but for some reason, the image of Varya kept surfacing in my head. The wedding agency manager entered the office with the next set of documents. I mechanically signed them, carefully checking every detail. My desire for perfection extended to everything, from business presentations to the wedding ceremony. Mr. Volsky, the final preparations have been completed, and we are fully prepared for tomorrow, the manager said to me. A strange anxiety seized me. I realized that tomorrow Varya would see me completely different, successful, rich, and seemingly absolutely happy. Eleonora continued to discuss the details, not noticing my inner tension. For her, this was just a social event, an important event in our social life. By the way, I have invited some influential partners from your company. I think it will be beneficial for both sides, she noted. I simply nodded in response. Even on her wedding day, she was thinking about connections and opportunities. Late in the evening, left alone in my luxurious apartment, I stared out the window at the night city for a long time. The light seemed distant and cold, like my own feelings. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out, but instead of answering, my gaze fell on an old photograph of Varya, hidden deep in the closet. Did I really make the right choice? The thought flashed through my head. I went to bed, not suspecting what surprises fate had in store for me. Meanwhile, in her cozy apartment, Varvara was pondering the invitation she had received. The soft light of the lamp filled the room with warmth and comfort, but Varvara's soul was in turmoil. She was surprised and a little scared. Why am I reacting so strongly to this invitation? She wondered, sitting at her desk and looking out the window at the passers-by. When I saw his name on the envelope, my heart skipped a beat, she confessed to herself. Memories of Arseny flooded over her like a wave. On the one hand, she was proud of what she had achieved as a teacher, inspiring her students every day, helping children learn about the world and giving them her love and care. But on the other hand, remembering her joint plans with Arsini was unbearably painful. Why is it so difficult to let go? Varya sighed, leaning back in her chair. She decided to call her best friend Margarita. On the second ring, she heard a familiar voice. Hello, Varya, how are you? It's been a long time since you called. Rita, I need to talk to you, Varya said, trying to hide her emotions. Right now? Margarita asked in surprise. Are you in class? No, I'm on break. You won't believe it, I received an invitation to Arsini's wedding. To his wedding. Margarita was silent. How do you feel? Varya sighed and hugged herself. I can't find a place for myself, I can only think about the past. I don't know how to act. On the one hand, I'm proud of my achievements. I'm a good teacher, and I have something to offer my students. I'm not ashamed to talk about how my life has changed, but constantly returning to memories. You need to decide for yourself what's important to you. If you want to close this chapter, perhaps this will be the right step, her friend tactfully interrupted. You're right, I could just try and see how things go, Varya said softly. So, are you going to the wedding? Varya replied with feeling, I'm going to the wedding to turn the page and tell myself that everything is okay. Good girl. And remember, Margarita added, when you get there, you'll already have your own life and your own story. This is just a celebration, not a battle for your heart. Varya laughed. Yes, you're right. I have my own life. And maybe this step will be the beginning of something new. Maybe I'll even be able to meet someone new, she whispered, smiling to herself. Varya spent the rest of the evening in these pleasant thoughts about the future, feeling a surge of energy and self-confidence. The wedding hall of the Crystal Palace shone with solemn splendor. The crystal chandeliers reflected the soft light on the snow-white tablecloths. The wait was becoming a real torment for me. I was surreptitiously glancing at the entrance door, and my heart was counting the moments. Eleonora, dressed in a luxurious wedding dress by a famous designer, was quietly chatting about something with her friends, and her cold gaze was occasionally gliding across the hall, evaluating the guests. And then Varya appeared. She entered majestically, in an elegant dress that emphasized her inner strength and dignity, but my attention instantly switched to the small figure next to her. A boy of about 6 stood near Varya, with dark hair and strikingly familiar features. I felt something tear inside me. A strange silence hung in the hall. The guests froze, catching a barely noticeable tension that suddenly filled the entire space. Varya, I said softly. Varya met my gaze calmly, but her eyes were filled with an ocean of emotions, from triumph to hidden sadness. I'm not alone, she replied. The boy was looking at me openly and curiously, and there was something so familiar in his gaze that I caught my breath. This is Alexei, Varya explained briefly. Eleonora, sensing the strange shift in mood, slowly approached us, and a wary curiosity appeared in her eyes. Who is Alexei? She asked, looking first at Varya and then at the boy. I was silent, staring intently at the child, and some inexplicable foreboding crept into my soul. The boy's features were too familiar, too similar to my own. The tension was building with each passing second. Mom, Alexei said softly, clutching Varya's hand tighter, can I have fun now? Varya gently stroked his head, and this gesture was filled with such tenderness that my heart froze. Eleonora was the first to break the silence. What is happening here? Her voice sounded like a crystal glass striking a marble floor. I felt reality slowly but surely changing. The solemnity of the wedding day was dissolving, giving way to something deeper and more significant. And at that moment I realized that my life would change drastically, right now, here, in this hall. A tense silence hung in the hall. The guests froze in anticipation of something momentous. Alexei was still looking at me openly, without fear, with the childlike spontaneity that is capable of breaking down any barriers. Time seemed to stand still. I was looking at the little boy next to Varya, and something inside me was trembling, some vague premonition that I could not explain. Alexei was standing completely still, a little tense but curious, and his brown eyes were exactly like my own. Eleonora noticed the sharp change in my mood. Her perfectly styled hair and flawless wedding makeup contrasted with the sudden tension in the air. She slowly approached me, and her heels tapped out a clear rhythm on the marble floor of the wedding hall. What's happening? She whispered, squeezing my hand, but I didn't hear her. All my attention was fixed on the boy. Alexei was dressed in an elegant little suit that had obviously been bought with special care. Varya was standing next to her son, and her hand rested protectively on his shoulder. Who is this boy? Eleonora asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Varya was silent, her gaze was firm and unwavering, but I noticed a slight trembling of her hand. His name is Alexei, she repeated. Silence reigned in the hall. The guests, who had just been about to celebrate a wedding, were now absorbed in the unfolding drama, and the whispers were growing like a soft surf. Alexei, I repeated. And who is his father? Varya silently looked at me, unwilling to answer the question. Varya, if you don't tell me what's going on, I can't take it anymore, I said, trying to sound confident, but my voice was faltering treacherously. She looked at me, and in her eyes there was something, anger. Apprehension, or sadness. I insisted, and soon all secrets were revealed. He is my son, she finally said, lowering her gaze. The blow was so strong that I literally felt the ground slipping out from under my feet. Eleonora gasped, and her flawless wedding makeup began to smudge. I gave birth to our son and raised him alone, Varya said. I felt some incredible upheaval happening inside me. Memories that I had hidden for so long now came flooding back, our last conversation, various tears, my coldness and calculation. Why did you keep silent? I asked. You were too busy to notice anything but your business, Varya replied. Eleonora, who had been silent until that moment, suddenly burst into hysterical laughter. What is this, some kind of joke? Today is my wedding day, and suddenly some child appears. But I could no longer hear her. My gaze was fixed on Alexei. The boy looked calm and curious, not at all frightened by what was happening. Hello, I said softly. Hello, Alexei replied. At that moment I realized that my life would never be the same again. The wedding, which I had planned as a triumph of my success, became a moment of truth. The air in the hall was charged, and in my head, a chaos of thoughts. Anger, bewilderment, sudden paternal tenderness. How could you hide the existence of a son from me? I repeated again and again, and my voice trembled with restrained emotion. Anna, maintaining a calm that was difficult for her, replied firmly, "You were too busy with your career, Alexander. When I got pregnant, you were completely engrossed in your work. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen." Alexei, who was standing nearby, looked at his father with wide, curious, and hopeful eyes. His features undeniably resembled me, the same cheekbones and the same attentive gaze. Absolute silence reigned in the hall. The guests, who had just been about to celebrate the wedding, had now turned into silent observers of the dramatic scene. They couldn't take their eyes off me. Victoria suddenly burst into a hysterical scream. "What's going on here? This is a disgrace. How can you put on such a show right now, on our wedding day?" I turned to her, and my gaze was cold and resolute. "The wedding is cancelled, Victoria. I can't get married knowing that I have a son I didn't know about." Victoria paled. Her carefully crafted plans, her ambitious strategy of a marriage of convenience, were instantly collapsing. "You've gone mad," she shouted. "We spent so much money, so much effort. You can't just take it all back." But I was no longer listening to her. All my attention was focused on Alexei. I slowly knelt down to be on the same level with him. "My name is Alexander. I'm your dad." Alexei, a little embarrassed but without fear, smiled. "I know. Mom has told me a lot about you." Tears appeared in my eyes. Years of professional success, endless meetings, negotiations, and ambition suddenly seemed so empty compared to this little person who was looking at me with an open heart. Next to me, Varia's gaze expressed a mixture of pride and cautious hope. She understood that this moment could be the beginning of something new or a final break. The guests continued to whisper, while the photographers, forgetting about the ceremony, were feverishly clicking their shutters, capturing the incredible turn of events. I stood up, took Alexei by the hand, and my heart filled with something greater than ambition and success. "We need to talk," I said to Varia, and at that moment I knew for sure that my life would never be the same again. Morning light slowly filled the living room of Anna's apartment. I was sitting opposite Alexei, who was engrossed in playing with a construction set on the floor. 6 years of lost time were literally screaming in the silence. "How did you learn to build such complex models?" I asked, trying to hide my inner turmoil. Alexei raised his head, and his brown eyes, an exact copy of my own, looked at me attentively. "Mom taught me. She says it's important to read a lot and be patient." Anna, who was standing by the kitchen window, didn't interfere or look at us. "You have to be patient. I want to be with you," I said softly. "If you'll let me." Anna slowly turned around, and her gaze was stern, but in the depths of her eyes there was hope. Being a father is more than just being present. It means being there every day, supporting, listening. I nodded, understanding that my path to redemption was only just beginning. Victoria, my former fiancée, had already sent angry messages to all her acquaintances, trying to portray me in a negative light, but that didn't matter anymore. Alexei handed me the assembled model of the plane. "Want to see?" I glued it all myself. At that moment, I felt something new, something I had never felt before, genuine parental tenderness, fragile, but real. "Let's build something together," I suggested to my son. Anna watched us, allowing herself a cautious hope. I understood that I had a long way to go to rebuild trust, but for the first time in many years I felt that I was moving in the right direction. My former life, offices, contracts, the endless race for success, now seemed like a distant, almost ghostly mirage. The present was here, next to my son, with the opportunity to start all over again. "I want to be a part of your life, if you'll let me," I said softly. Alexei smiled, and in that smile there was everything: hope, forgiveness, and a timid anticipation of the future. Over the next few months, I continued to meet with Anna in order to build a healthy relationship with her and our son. Together we formed a strong triangle, which was only just beginning its journey. With each passing day, I realized more and more that failures and successes are just moments, but the real value of life lies in the love that I share with my son and that has now become an integral part of my life. I was glad that, despite all the mistakes, my life had become much fuller. Now I had not just a fortune, but a family that I had been looking for so long. And even despite all the difficulties, each new day brought with it hope and light on a new, much-needed path for me. That's the story. Friends, what do you think about it? Write your comments, like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any more exciting stories. Until next time.